So now we're back here at the charts, and as you can see, we don't really have that exact shape. So we need to get creative. We need to find a way to take one of these spheres and make it so that the lines go horizontally. I think this piezo is going to work out really well. Because we have these little islands of value right here, we can stretch that horizontally, and that'll create those stripes that we saw in the reference. All right, so now let's make another noise. We'll say max on noise, plug that into the surface. We'll say piezo, and then take the scale down to 0.1. Obviously, we need to change these settings so that we can begin getting these stripes in there. So let's take the low clip and get rid of all of those gray values until we're left with something right around there. We can also play with the octaves, and maybe that will offer us something good. I'm thinking maybe somewhere around here will be pretty nice. Let's change the seed. Well, that doesn't seem to do much, but we could change the offset here maybe. Yeah, there we go. We could do this kind of thing. Let's now stretch these values. So we'll say offset, maybe a value of 25 in the X and 25 in Z. And actually, sorry, not the offset, the scale. 25 in X, 25 in Z. And there we go. Now we have scratches that look pretty much just like what we have going on right there. It's great. So we have that going on. Let's see what happens when we turn up this contrast. Maybe we'll do that, take down the clip, maybe take the high clip and do something right around there with that. We just need to alter this so that it fits generally what we saw in the reference, maybe 0.05. Okay, so if we do that, I think this looks pretty nice. Now, let me show you something else that you can do. I don't like how uniform the distribution is on these scratches. So let's take another noise and multiply that against this noise signal. Let's make another max on noise right here. Scale of 1, low clip 0, high clip 1, contrast 0. So back to the defaults. Let's also use an FBM this time. So we end up, well, let's see here. FBM, let's refresh this. There we go. Scale, 1, 1, 1. Okay, I think this is getting somewhere. Let's take the high clip and clip this out to 1 quite a bit because we don't want to cut away too much of those scratches. We just want to cut away some of those areas that were, just too uniform. So we'll go like that. Now that we have that, let's use a color layer. So RS color layer. This is what you can use to blend noises together, much like Photoshop. So we have the base layer, and then the next layer is going to go right there, and we can set the blend mode like so. So we can just multiply, and boom. Now we have that going on. If we change the high and low clip, we can also modify the scratches however we want. So we can do stuff like that. But that's basically how you do that. So now that we have this signal, we want to then somehow mix that with our base layer right here. So it makes sense to cut into these values. We're at white right now, which means that we want to multiply against these values. So let's use another RS color layer. Our base is going to be this noise right here. Layer 1 will be this guy, and the blend mode will be multiply. Now right away, it's not going to work very well because we need to take the opposite of this signal. White is 1, black is 0. We're multiplying those values. So anything times 0 gets rid of it. Good thing we have this RS vector inverts right here. And now you can see these scratches begin to show up. So that is pretty much what you do there. Let's go ahead and actually change some of this stuff real quick. We can add more scratches in or take them away by adjusting some of these settings. Also with this noise, we could do the same thing. So we could bring some of that back right there. And we take the high clip. So we could do something like that. And then maybe let's try just bringing this up in Y a little bit. See what happens. There we go. There's a different version. I like that one better. Now that we've done this, let's see what happens when we bring back our original crystal shape. My guess is that we should begin seeing something. But we don't because we haven't done that. There we go. There's those scratches. Cool. So we have that. The scratches are a little bit too intense. So now we can go to this mask and we can bring this back. And just like that, we can get those scratches in there. Really, really cool. So let's do something like that. And I think you get the idea. You can fine tune it from here, but that is how you do the scratches. Looking at the rest of this, I'd say that let's just find some kind of general noise to fill out the body of the crystal. I think actually this might be a good opportunity to do something for the roughness. And for that, I'm just going to pick something that I like the look of. To be honest with you, sometimes I just look at this reference, and if I like the way it looks, I'll just add it in. When it's a mid-ground to background prop, you can kind of get away with stuff like that. So a good example might be this Poxo. If we set that up into the roughness, that might be perfect for what we're looking at. So let's say max on noise, go back to the surface. Let's say Poxo now, that guy, and then take the scale down to 0.1. So we have that kind of thing going on. One thing that's important is to, especially in the roughness, control your values. And the way you can do that is using a color change range right here. This is basically the same thing as a fit function. These values go from 0 to 1, which means that our roughness slider can go from 0 to 1. That's too much. We don't want a roughness doing that. So instead, let's set a maximum roughness value to something like 0.3. We'll go like that. And by doing so, we can really control how much, or I guess what these values are going into the roughness channel. You don't want to just leave this at 0 to 1 because it'll take those roughness values way out of whack. So anyway, I just thought I should mention that because it's really important. Let's turn up the octaves, make a really fine, detailed looking thing. I think that's pretty cool. And maybe take the low clip like that. And let's actually take our contrast up a little bit, our low clip back down to 0. So we end up maybe something right around there. Okay, we have that going on. Now let's go to our shader, and we want reflective roughness. This guy. Collapse that, and take the out color to the surface. See what that does. Okay, we zoom in here a little bit. We can begin seeing that it's sort of cutting into the stuff in general. Let's go ahead and take this contrast back to 0. So we'll do that. And if we turn this up further, let's see what happens here. So 0.5. Okay, and I think something like this might be good. Reflection roughness, I think that's fine. Let's also check on our shader that the refraction is listening to the roughness. It is. So when it's grayed out like that, that means it's paying attention to this roughness, and that's how it's getting its values. Okay, so I think this looks pretty good in general. I think you guys get the idea of how you can begin building this stuff up. For these crystals, I think it's fine. Also, just to recap here, in this lesson, we talked about layering stuff with the color layer. That's a really important thing to know about. Be sure to control your values with this color range. And yeah, when you're testing things out, also just keep track of what you're doing by always plugging into the surface each time you make a noise. That way you really know what you're doing, and that's going to really serve you well and save you time.